This offseason for the Texans already feels impossible in terms of the moves they have to make. To put some more pressure to that, they have players that they need to extend, with news coming out on Derek Stingley Jr., the all-pro cornerback. He's set to get a monster extension, and I don't disagree. Pay the guy. He's an all-pro. He had an amazing season. Top of the league, really. If he's not already, definitely solidified himself as a top 5 cornerback in this league. But when you look at what he's been able to do, the money he's going to get is going to be tough for the Texans to go out and get other guys. So the expectation is that he's going to break the record for the highest paid cornerback, and Pat Surtain holds that right now with $96 million off of 4 years, which is around $24 a year. And the expectation is that the Texans are going to give Stingley a 5-year, $125 million extension, and that could be soon, it could be later. This will be his 4th season in the league. He's an all-pro. He's playing unbelievable. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it, but when you look at the situation that is the Texans cap space, it is not a good situation to be in. And the reason I say that is because you already have 3 players over the $20 million cap hit number, and the cap space the Texans already have around $5 million. So not the greatest. When you pay another cornerback around $25 million in cap hit, I'm not saying he doesn't deserve the contract, but now you're limiting yourself to what you can do on offense. You have Nico Collins. You already know Stephon Diggs. They're probably going to bring him back, but he's coming off an injury. Tank Dell is another guy who's injured, and the offensive line was bad last year. You kind of want to revamp that. So there's a lot of decisions to be made, and if you are going to give Stingley a record-breaking deal, which, again, I'm not going to say that's a bad idea, but Laremy Tunsil's a $28 million cap hit. Maybe you think about trading him and freeing up $21 million in cap, considering he's getting older. He just had an 18 penalty season. This is where you have to start thinking if you're Nick Caserio. Love the fact that they're going to pay Stingley. You got to give him a lot of contract. And well, honestly, let me pull up the stats right now. Derek Stingley Jr., absolutely unreal season. 17 games, again, top of the cream of the crop of terms of cornerbacks. You look at what he's been able to do. 5 interceptions, 2 of them in the postseason against Justin Herbert. And again, the kind of stats that you're seeing right here, the 37 tackles, it doesn't look like it's anything special, but you look at the amount of times that quarterbacks target him is limited. So basically a lockdown corner. And what Stingley said about wanting to stay in Houston and a potential extension, he wants to be here forever. So great news there. Pay the guy. He deserves the money. However, you now limit yourself to what you can get on offense, on defense. And honestly, I would just say the cap space for the NFL right now is a little difficult to deal with, right? You don't have a lot to deal with in terms of cap space. They have already extended the NFL cap space multiple times, and it's like, how are you going to figure it out? The cap space now is $255 million a team, and that could be extended. There's been rumors that they're going to just get rid of the salary cap altogether, which, kind of like baseball, it would be difficult, the MLB. But again, I don't believe the cap space will ever go away for the NFL, and it's kind of difficult to believe because franchise tags are a thing. But the whole point of where I'm getting at here is the Texans need to figure out what they're going to do this offseason because they still need another weapon. They still need some secondary help. And if you're going to give Stingley this massive contract extension, you're going to have to move some money around. So Tunsil's a $28 million cap hit. Get rid of Shaq Mason, who's a $12 million cap hit. Get rid of Dalton Schultz, who's another guy, over $10 million cap. So it's just a lot of players that you need to kind of figure out where do they stand on the team, what value do they bring, and can you shop them, right? The Texans' offensive line was terrible last year. Do you just kind of scrap them and say, hey, well, let's start from fresh and pick up a couple guys in free agency? Because there's a lot of free agent tackles and guards. You could even get somebody in the draft. Or maybe you trade your all-pro tackle Tunsil to free up some cap space and maybe get a first-round pick. And then there's so much you can do with potentially packaging deals and moving up in the draft. But I think, honestly, the first thing it kind of starts with is bringing back guys that want to be here. And Stingley, I can argue you pay him now. That way, in the future, the contracts don't go bigger. You look at wide receiver, for example. Wide receivers were $20 million. They were like $15 forever. DeAndre Hopkins got $20, kind of changed the market. Christian Kirk changed the wide receiver market. Now guys are getting $30, $35 million a year, just breaking records and going above and above and above. And that's why the salary cap is kind of ridiculous, because when you have players that just ramp it up, you get $10 million, $20 million. All right, quarterbacks are making $50 million a year. What is cap space anymore? There is no such thing. So the teams that are in cap hell with, the Saints and maybe the Chiefs, they always find a way to bring guys back. But it's just, what is cap space anymore? So the whole thing is with the NFL, do you extend that to 300? Because now players are getting, again, 25, 30 million. It's just going up and up and up and up. So this is a tough situation for the Texans. You have to bring back Stingley. He's an absolute monster, all pro, 23, young, probably going to hit the prime of his career. You can't let him walk. Again, he's got a couple of years until his extension is due, but do you pay him now? There's all these rumors of what's going to happen with the Texans, and I'm just worried about what the Texans can be able to do, because I don't think you can sign T. Higgins for a multi-year deal at $25, $30 million, or go trade for a wide receiver like Garrett Wilson. Like, the whole point of this is getting a weapon this season. The whole problem of last year, it was obviously Bobby Slowick, as what the Texans thought, so they fired Slowick, and now what do you do with the offense? The offense is the problem. You pay Stingley, great. Now what? Will Anderson's going to get a contract extension next year? Like, how are we going to play this out? Will Anderson's going to get paid in a few years. CJ Stroud's going to get paid in a few years. What are you going to do? Nico Collins just got paid. Stroud's coming up a couple of years. So it's just a lot of players that have to get paid eventually. And honestly, I don't hate starting from scratch. Get rid of Tunsil, get rid of Howard, get rid of Mason, get rid of Schultz, get rid of Kenyon Green, the guard, Jimmy Ward. Maybe he comes back healthy. He's been banged up the past few years. There's just a lot of questions and a lot of decisions on what the Texans need to do. And the rumors that I'm hearing about Stingley getting all this money, which it will probably happen because he's a great player and he deserves the money. However, this puts the Texans in a rough spot in terms of if they want to perform next year. Because I think the way DeMeco Ryans and Nick Caserio are handling this situation is saying, okay, Bobby Slowick was the problem. He had these long developing plays. He kind of ran the ball every single play. Maybe if we bring in somebody like Brian Johnson who can just, pepper the ball down the field into these receivers, then we don't have to worry about it, and we could just keep the same team we had last year and move forward and have a new offense, and then we'll go far in the playoffs. If that's the mindset you have, that is not going to be a successful recipe to win football games. And the only reason I say that is because the injuries the Texans had last year and the offensive line struggles they had last year, it's all going to come back and circle back and bite them. So it's not a good sign when you're going to pay a player who definitely deserves money, but now you don't have any money to go out and get a star wide receiver or to get an offensive lineman to help out your quarterback. So the Texans are kind of screwed in terms of cap space and what they can do on potential draft options. So they might just go get Tez Johnson in the draft. Who knows? There's so much they can do with what they have. But again, it all starts with trading. And I don't know if Nick Caserio is willing to just give up on players and say, all right, that's it. The only real miss that I absolutely do not like from Nick Caserio is the fact that he signed, and I don't have a graphic, but it's Kenyon Green, who we'll put that back up there. Kenyon Green making, rookie deal. He's awful. I'm sorry, 15th overall. It would have been better if he's a second or third round pick. Kenyon Green has been the biggest disappointment from the Nick Caserio era. And outside of Stingley, you do have Kamari Lassiter, who they just drafted in the second round last year. But looking at the offseason, you have to get either a wide receiver or offensive lineman in free agency, or both. And in order to do that, you got to free up some cap space. They're probably going to extend Stingley, maybe get rid of Tunsil, Mason, and Schultz. Who knows? But there's so much the Texans have to do. And if they do sign Stingley to a massive contract extension, it's going to be a rough sled as to what can the Texans get in a positive, productive offseason, because you don't want to be that team that doesn't sign anyone, and I don't believe that's the Texans. Nick Caserio is going to either go out and sign some low-budget players and get players on minimum deals, or figure it out, get some veteran guys, and that's kind of not doing anything, no offense, because you bring in those guys, yes, they're talented, but it doesn't add any value to the receiving core or to the offensive line if you just go out and get Shaq Mason. Mason was injured most of the year, but he didn't really benefit the offensive line. He was just a kind of guy who was there. Anyway, the whole point of this video, Derek Stingley is set to make a record-breaking contract extension, and it is going to take a dip in the cap space for the Texans this offseason. Let me know if you agree, disagree with the contract. Is the money in general just getting out of hand in the NFL? I definitely think Stingley deserves it, but when you look at what the Texans need to do this offseason, there's a lot of work left. They still have yet to sign an offensive coordinator. They're still interviewing other candidates. So, tough spot for the Texans. They're going to get a lot of money taken away with this Stingley deal if it is supposed to happen this offseason. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. And Texans Digest, hit that sub button. We'll be back every day, posting until free agency, give you my predictions as well as what's going to happen with this team. Right now, it's not looking so good. The offseason is inevitable, but unless Nick Caserio makes some big-time moves and trades some big-time players, I'm not expecting T. Higgins or a big-name wide receiver to come to Houston, unfortunately. But that's the video for today. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.